Hi, this is Bill from Hiragari. Today I am going to get stuck into making this pedal board type deal for all of my effects pedals and for the little boxes and things that I use to make noise with, all to go into the aluminium case. So first thing I need to do is work out some measurements. Okay, so I need to know the maximum height of the tallest thing that's going to be going into this. So might need to do something about that. I already have this aluminium tool case, and the idea is to make a pedal board that fits perfectly inside it so I can use it to gig with. I also wanted to show the process of designing and building this when you've just got a garage and a couple of hand tools. Okay, so I've got the temporary workbench set up here, the folding table and all the other stuff over here. So I need to get the dimensions of the inside of this case as well. You can see this used to be the gig case, so it's got padding on the inside, which is good. I'm going to keep this because this would be useful for kind of cables and things like that. So if I can flip that around there, maybe I can take this off, toggle this that way, and that would be good. That gives a little bit of a buffer there. And maybe I'll put some foam on here at some point in time, but I need to get the measurements for the inside of this case. Oh, cable ties, useful. So I've got the clearance in here. It's about 95 clearance to the top of the foam there. 40, 45-ish to clearance there. So let's say, let's say 95 and 40. So that means that when it's closed, I can have from the bottom to the top 135. Okay, so now that the height is sorted, now I need to work out what the dimensions of the case are this way and this way on the interior, and then I can work out what I'm going to do in terms of the actual pedal board design. Having a look at the case design, so I've got 430mm going crossways and 270mm pieces going this way, and then the 19mm and 19mm thickness will add up to a total of 310, give or take 2mm. So therefore I need to figure out what I'm going to do for the rails going across this way. So I'm using this hardwood banister, which I got from the home centre for about $9 for a 1.8 metre section, and it's 70mm wide. I assume they figured that you were going to finish it, but it's already got kind of finished rounded over edges here, and I think it'll look quite nice. It's already planed really, really well, so maybe all I have to do is just give it a light sand and then oil it when it's done. But now I need to look at what I've got to do the rails here. This is for synthesizer casings, so I'm going to put that aside. That's some oak. Like this stuff here, I reckon this might work. What have we got here? I'll do 3. See if maybe I'll get 4 rails out of here, because I obviously want space for cables underneath. But what I can do is I can Velcro the top to secure the pedals. I can Velcro the underside to allow for cables to be attached with other Velcro loops, and then this kind of rail here can sit halfway, and sit kind of at the halfway point, and these are going to be secured with dowels, so that'll probably work well. I borrowed this miter saw from a friend of mine. I could use a handsaw or my circular saw, but because I'm making something that I would like to be really square and within some fine tolerances to fit neatly inside the case, I decided to ask a mate if I could borrow his gear. Because the saw is not up on a bench and doesn't have stop blocks or anything on it, in order to make sure that all of the pieces were the same size, I measured very carefully my first piece and then snuck up on it with the saw, making sure that the cut was lined up straight, and then I transferred the measurements to the other pieces and continually checked to make sure that they were all equal length. Now just a test fit to make sure that the whole thing will fit inside the case, and everything does, and it's square. And now I'll start working out what I need to do for the rails. Basically using the same process as before to make sure that all of the rails were equal length. I'm standing on the shoulder of giants here. I didn't come up with a design entirely in a vacuum. In the comments below, I've linked to a couple of really good pedalboard tutorials that I watched a couple of times to get some ideas before beginning my own project. I was going to go originally with 3 rails, and I thought, oh no, I'll go with 4 rails because of the spacing. But now I'm thinking maybe, yeah, something like that. But what I'll do is I'll put these up so these are halfway up here. So they're going to be dowels going through here, here, here and here, and then these are all going to be dowels as well. These are 6mm dowels, and I've actually got some strips of oak dowel that I'm going to use. So very malty wood. That was a hardwood, which I think maybe Merbau. I think that's how it's pronounced, Merbau, which is a tropical hardwood, and then this is just bog standard dressed pine, and then there'll be oak dowels that are going to go into it. So it'll be pretty cool. Alright, well, I guess it's time to start drilling the dowel holes. What I've just done here is just a little 2.5mm drill bit just to drill some pilot holes for the doweling bit, which has a little depth stopper on it. So basically what I did was measured up the thickness of the timber, worked out the center point on it, and then I can basically butt this up against the edge of the 2 long pieces and it'll line up with there, and then I can use it, clamp it or hold it to the end of the long pieces, and then theoretically all the holes should line up to make my dowels straight, theoretically. And then what I do next is I take these, now these are dowel pins. You can see this little pin on the end, and that is 6mm, so that's a 6mm dowel, and I've got 3 of them. They came in a set of 4. Basically what I do is do this. So they go into the end here. So there's one that's a little bit hard to get in. And then what you do, this is quite dark timber, so take a piece of tape, 2 pieces of tape, and this is basically for the purpose of this. And what you end up with is these. I've just put a pencil mark on them so that you can see. And this lines up perfectly with the edge of the dowel. So now I've done all of my corners. You can see that I've labelled up A, B, C, D, and the orientation of these and the numbers, the labels together, help me make sure that when I'm pulling it apart to do different processes, that everything goes back where it's supposed to be. Because you can imagine if I drilled all of the holes on here and flipped it over, then it may not line up again and it may not be square, and vice versa. So there's a whole bunch of whole reason for doing that. D, 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 A, and C, C, D, sorry, C, C, B, and B. So once I've drilled it all together, once I've drilled it out, then the next step is to start prepping it for putting the dowels in. So now doing the really fun job of cutting the dowels. What I'm doing is making sure that my dowels are at least a little bit longer than here. I don't want to cut them, not cutting them ridiculously long, but I need them to be at least long enough to go twice into the length here to keep the join. And they're going to be glued as well. So that's 6mm pine, and this one here is 6mm oak. So I'm going to get cutting on this one here, and I'm just doing that with a little Japanese Yorba pull saw. I decided to use dowels because ultimately everything was going to be held together in butt joints. I don't have a good enough setup to do nice and neat miters. I'm not proficient enough to be able to do dovetails well enough for my satisfaction, so that's why I decided to go with dowels. Turned out to be a kind of zen experience cutting out stacks and stacks of them though, just whittling away. So it turns out I didn't get enough of either to be able to get all of the dowels that I needed between the pine and the oak, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an oak, a pine, an oak, and just do that all the way around, and I don't know, maybe it'll look nice once it's been sanded and stained, or sanded and lacquered, sorry. We'll find out. Using my little Japanese marking knife just to taper off the edge of the dowel, just so it's got a little bit of a purchase to hammer in better when it's going in, just a little bit of a point on it. Once all the dowels were cut and tapered, it was time to assemble everything together. I used Gorilla Glue because that's what I had available, and I applied that inside each of the deeper holes. I applied it inside each of the dowel holes with a brush, and then I hammered the dowels through, finally applying clamps to start to pull everything together. Prior to assembling everything, I masked off the areas that I was concerned about squeeze out or excess glue being forced out of the dowels. It turned out that I spent a lot of time later on removing this with a knife because I didn't remove it quickly enough during the glue up. One of the big challenges at the end was trying to fit all of my clamps onto the piece where the cross beams kept on bumping into each other, but I managed in the end. This is the stunning clamp job. So basically, yeah, clamps going forwards and backwards, going crossways and sideways, and then because there's a slight twist to it, so just seeing if I can leave it overnight and see if that will come out with these little Japanese metal clamps clamped to a piece of MDF. Okay, so here we are the next day. I'm going to take the clamps off now. As I took the clamps off, to be honest, I was a little bit nervous that it was going to spring back or break apart or something or other because of how tight I'd had to wind the clamps the night before to try and get the twist out of it, but it turned out I didn't have too much to worry about. The whole thing hasn't sprung apart, which is good, so evidently the glue's safe and it hasn't stuck to the MDF. Just going to check it's square, because if it's not square it won't fit in the case. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. It's pretty good. Good enough for cricket anyway. If it's not square, it won't fit in the box. It's still got a little bit of a wobble, like it's a little bit high on like 3 corners by a little bit, but I can live with that. It's probably something to do with the way that I put it together, or it wasn't. This is timber that was bought as dressed as much as possible. Oh well, I guess it is what it is. But it looks pretty cool unfinished. After I removed all of the painter's tape and the excess glue that had squeezed out and dried overnight, I did that using my marking knife. I came along and flush cut all of the dowels. Alright, taking form. So before I do a final sand, before the thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 5mm round over and do the corners, and I think I'll just do everything, do all the faces as well on there. Not just kind of, you know, prettied up a little bit, and so that it's kind of uniform all the way around. I used a round over bit in my trim router to do all of the inside and outside edges and the corners of the hardwood frame for the pedal board. After that, I started sanding with 60 grit, working my way up to 600 grit. This took me a while to do. I ended up doing it outside in the fresh air because the hardwood is quite dusty. I believe the timber is Merbo and it kind of gums up the sandpaper a bit, so I made sure to use methylated spirits to wipe down between each sand. Finally, I applied 5 coats of wipe-on poly that I made myself. It's 50% turpentine and 50% oil-based polyurethane, and I put a link in the description to a really great video on how to do your own wipe-on poly and how to use it from Stumpy Nub's Woodworking Journal. Because I live in the tropics, the temperature and humidity generally are quite high. I've seen it described as being somewhat similar to Florida in the United States. So just brushing on straight up polyurethane takes weeks to dry and it's super tacky. I was able to get 2 to 3 coats of wipe-on poly done every 24 hours. I'm really happy with the outcome. It looks pretty much exactly what I wanted it to look like. Keep an eye out for a future video in which I do the actual setup and put Velcro on it and then attach the pedals and so on and so forth. There are some bits and pieces that are on order at the moment that I'm waiting for that are still going to be a couple of weeks away, primarily due to COVID-related shipping delays and so on and so forth. Can't do anything about those, but I hope that this gave you some ideas about making a pedal board of your own, whether for conventional guitar use or for something a little bit more unconventional like this. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get notifications when the next video goes up, like the one where I do the setup for this. I'll see you in the next video.